Most people don't realize this, but in the United States, police are legally allowed to lie to you. So, what does that actually mean in real life?
Have you ever heard the phrase, "The police have to tell you the truth"? It sounds right, doesn't it? It feels like it should be a rule, a cornerstone of our justice system. We grow up watching TV shows where the detective outsmarts the suspect, but we assume there are lines they can't cross. One of those lines, surely, is outright lying. But what if I told you that in the United States, police are not only allowed to lie during an interrogation, they're trained to do it. It's a legally sanctioned interrogation technique, and it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of American law. Let's get this straight from the get-go. This isn't some conspiracy theory or a fringe legal opinion. This is established law, upheld by the Supreme Court. The landmark case is Frazier v. Cupp from 1969. In this case, the police falsely told the suspect, Frazier, that his cousin had already confessed to the crime. Frazier then confessed. He later tried to overturn his confession, arguing it was obtained through trickery. The Supreme Court disagreed. They ruled that deception, on its own, does not necessarily make a confession involuntary. And with that ruling, the floodgates opened. So what kind of lies are we talking about? It's not just little white lies. Police can tell you they have evidence that they absolutely do not possess. They can claim to have your fingerprints on a weapon, even if the weapon hasn't been tested or your prints aren't there. They can say they found your DNA at the scene, a complete fabrication. They can show you a fake lab report with your name on it, printed out to look official. They can tell you an eyewitness identified you in a lineup when in reality no one did, or the witness picked someone else entirely. And it gets even more manipulative. A very common tactic is to separate two suspects and tell each one that the other has already confessed and pinned all the blame on them. This is the classic prisoner's dilemma. It creates paranoia, distrust, and an overwhelming pressure to tell your side of the story before the other person buries you. They might tell you your friend, your spouse, or your family member is in the next room giving a statement against you, when that person is actually at home, completely unaware of what's happening. They can also lie about the consequences. Now, they can't promise you a specific sentence. That's for a judge. But they can use very tricky language. They might say, "Look, the district attorney is looking at this case right now, and he usually goes easy on the guy who cooperates. But the guy who stays quiet, that's the guy who's going to take the fall for everything." Or they might say, "Just tell us what happened, and you can go home tonight." It's a powerful suggestion, a promise of relief. They are creating a false sense of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel that only exists if you talk. The goal is to make confessing feel like the only logical way out of a hopeless situation. Now, the legal reasoning is that an innocent person, knowing they didn't do it, would never confess to a crime, no matter what lies the police tell. So, if a lie produces a confession, the person must be guilty. But is that really how human psychology works under extreme duress? Let's think about it. Picture the scene. You've been in a small room for hours. You're exhausted. You're scared. You're isolated. You have detectives tag-teaming you, a constant drone of accusation. They seem to hold all the cards. They tell you they have video of you at the scene. They say your best friend has already sold you out. Your mind starts to race. Is it possible I blacked out? How can they have video? Is my memory wrong? The certainty of your own innocence begins to crack under the weight of their fabricated certainty. This is exactly why this tactic is so dangerous. It leads to false confessions. The Innocence Project, an organization that works to exonerate wrongfully convicted individuals, has found that in over a quarter of their DNA exoneration cases, the innocent person made a false confession, admission, or incriminating statement. These are not just isolated incidents. It is a documented pattern. People confess to end the interrogation. They are worn down and just want it to stop. Sometimes, especially with younger people or those with intellectual disabilities, they become confused and start to believe they might have actually done it. Sometimes they believe that if they just tell the police what they want to hear, they can go home and sort it all out later with a lawyer. They don't realize that the confession itself is the most powerful piece of evidence the prosecution will have against them. Think about the Central Park 5 case, now known as the Exonerated Five. 5 teenagers from Harlem were interrogated for hours and subjected to lies, threats, and manipulation. They were told if they just confessed, they could go home. All 5 ended up giving videotaped confessions to a brutal crime they did not commit. They were convicted and spent years in prison before the real perpetrator confessed, and DNA evidence confirmed their innocence. It is a tragic, real-world example of how police deception can destroy lives. So, if police can lie, and lies can lead to false confessions, what can you do to protect yourself? This brings us to the most important point. The law doesn't protect your belief in police honesty, but it does protect your right to remain silent. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution gives you the right not to incriminate yourself. It is your shield. No matter what the police say, no matter what evidence they claim to have, no matter what deal they says you have to take right now, you have the right to remain silent, and you have the right to an attorney. And that is the most powerful tool you have in that room. Here's the twist ending to this whole situation. The system isn't designed to be a truth-seeking contest between you and the police. They can lie, but you are not lying to protect yourself. You are exercising a right. It is an adversarial process, and silence prevents them from using your own words against you. By saying nothing, by saying, "I want a lawyer," you stop the interrogation in its tracks. Once you invoke your right to an attorney, police are legally required to stop questioning you until that attorney is present. It is not an admission of guilt. It is a fundamental right fought and died for. The police might try to persuade you not to use it. They might say, "You don't need a lawyer if you have nothing to hide." Only guilty people ask for lawyers. You look guilty by staying quiet. That is just another lie. Invoking your rights does not make you look guilty in a court of law. It shows that you understand how the system works. So the next time you see a detective show, or if you ever find yourself in that situation, remember the truth. They are legally allowed to build a complete fantasy world around you. They can construct a reality where the evidence is overwhelming and confession is your only escape. But you don't have to live in that fantasy. You can choose to step out of it by speaking 4 simple words. I am going to remain silent. I want a lawyer. In a game where the other side is allowed to cheat, your silence is the only winning move. Thanks for watching. Understanding your rights is the first step to protecting them.